Hello, first graders. My name's Amy.
And my name's Susan, and we work for the City of Fishers Parks Department. And today we've partnered with your school to bring you a very special program.
We're going to learn about nature.
And you're first graders, so we call this program
Nature First. Susan and I are back at Ritchie Woods, and things are about to get crazy around here. You see, the long days of winter are coming to a close, and soon we will see signs of spring popping up everywhere.
We love Ritchie Woods, and we hope you get to come visit soon. But spring doesn't just happen here, it happens everywhere. It happens all around our city, all around your home, and all around your neighborhood and school.
The changes that spring brings won't happen overnight. We can't just ring the buzzer, turn a switch, or set a timer. You won't wake up one morning and find all the leaves back on the trees. Just like you won't put all your winter clothes, your coats, hats, and sweatshirts away one night and start wearing shorts and flip-flops the next day.
The changes we see will happen gradually. That means slowly, over time. I bet you have a calendar in your classroom where you keep track of the days of the week, the months, and the special holidays. Nature has its very own calendar too.
It does. It's called phenology. And phenology is the study of the changes we observe in nature as we move through time. And guess what? You've been doing phenology all your life. For example, we know that you've noticed how trees change and look different from summer to fall to winter, from season to season. Now it's spring, and in spring, one thing we notice is that things start to green up, and they do it from the ground up.
And when you look out your window at your school or at your home, you'll notice that the plants near the ground start growing and getting green early in the spring. And then that same green starts creeping higher and higher until finally the green leaves on the tallest trees start to bud out.
If we look closely right now, we can see it happen right before our eyes. We can observe and record what is happening on Mother Nature's calendar. Here's what you'll need to join us on this adventure: a pencil, a notebook, and maybe a good hand lens, which some people call a magnifying glass. Let's go look around the forest for signs of change. There's a whole lot more to a forest than trees. The diversity of plants is amazing. Diversity means variety. There's a wide variety of plants here in the forest, lots of different kinds of plants. Sure, there are tall trees, but there are also small plants, and each one plays a very important role in the forest. Each type of plant is beautiful and interesting in its own way. There are 5 layers to the forest, and spring is the perfect time to look at the plants in each layer as they start to wake up in the warming days.
Let's start with the first layer of the forest, the bottom layer, which is called the forest floor. It's easy to explore this layer. Here in the soil, we find lots of minerals and water mixing together with all sorts of bacteria, as well as insects, plant roots, worms, and even some underground amphibians like toads and salamanders, or mammals like moles and voles. The forest floor will start to come alive with the warmer temperatures. You can do some digging in the soil in a place near you. Take notes or draw what you see. Scientists, there's a whole lot of wonderful things to discover if you look closely.
Let's get to work. The next layer of the forest is the herb layer. Won't be long, and the area between my foot and my knee will be the first to start to green up with wildflowers and other plants that will shoot up from the forest floor from plant parts that have been underground in the soil all winter. Before the leaves come out on the trees high above, plants in the herb layer will start to grow while they can get all the sunlight. Once those leaves come out on the trees, they'll be in the shade. Many forest animals that live on the ground will make their home in the herb layer. Spring is a wonderful time to come see some wildflowers that only bloom during the early spring months, just as the soil begins to warm up and gather all the sunlight. One of my favorite wildflowers here at Ritchie Woods is the trout lily. Before the leaves of the trees push out, the trout lily will push up from the forest floor. This is a picture of a trout lily that I took last spring here at Ritchie Woods. I know the date I took it because I wrote April 3rd in my science notebook. I also wrote down the temperature and that it was sunny that day. I can't wait to see my first trout lily this spring and see if it is blooming on the same date as last year. My science notebook helps me keep good records. Scientists keep good records.
Nature's calendar continues with the shrub layer greening up next. A shrub is a plant that's probably taller than a bush, but a lot shorter than a tree. Shrubs in the shrub layer are about my height, and here at Ritchie Woods, this spice bush is part of the shrub layer. Bright yellow flowers will pop open on the limbs of this spice bush even before the green leaves appear. Oh, first graders, when the beautiful yellow spice bush flowers appear, they will provide an early nectar source for insects that are also emerging on the warmer spring days. Later this spring and summer, the spice bush swallowtail butterfly will lay its eggs on the plant, and when the tiny caterpillars hatch out, they will eat the leaves of the shrub. Later in fall, the spice bush will provide tasty berries for birds and other animals.
Ooh, I can hardly wait to sketch a butterfly or caterpillar in my science notebook. But let's move on to the next layer. After the forest floor, the herb layer, the shrub layer, then comes the understory layer. The understory layer is made up of trees that are tall, but not quite as tall as the tallest trees in the forest. These are trees that don't require as much sunlight. I like to call the understory trees kid trees. They are the forest giant wannabes, who are small now, but will one day grow up like kids grow up, and they will be the tallest in the forest.
And the last layer of the forest is the canopy. The canopy trees are the tallest plants here at Ritchie Woods. These trees are like a roof, and when their leaves come out, they will get the most sunlight while blocking the rest of the light from the other layers. The canopy layer will be full of the insects, birds, and mammals that eat leaves or fruit.
So now we know all 5 layers. A forest has 5 layers. The forest floor, which contains the soil needed for plants to grow. The herb layer, which contains short plants, like wildflowers. The shrub layer, which contains bushes, like the spice bush. The understory, made up of small trees. And the canopy layer that has the tallest trees.
When spring arrives in March each year, we call it the spring equinox. There is an equal amount of daylight and nighttime. Remember, there are 24 hours in a day, so that means about 12 hours of daylight and about 12 hours of darkness. 12 plus 12 equals 24. But scientists who study nature's calendar, phenology, notice that from year to year, the rate that things green up can be very different. Some years, trees and other plants seem to wake up faster. Plants can't look at a calendar, so what is it other than more daylight that makes a plant green up faster or slower from year to year?
It's the weather, and mainly the temperature outside. A warm spring may cause plants to hurry up a little, sprout sooner, bloom sooner, grow those green leaves sooner. That's why keeping a science notebook can be so much fun. Try this. Find an outside area at your school or home, or even just a good window where you can look outside and see a group of trees and plants growing, or even just one tree.
Make yourself a notebook. Write the date and then note what the weather is like. Ask your parents or a teacher to check their cell phone to see what the temperature is. Is it cloudy or sunny? Sketch a picture or take a picture with a device. Go back on the same day each week for the next several weeks and look to see how it has changed. Share your observations and the data you collected with others and see if you can figure out a pattern or trend or even a relationship between the weather and what we find in nature.
You know, when I want to learn more about something, I can do research to learn more. I can find books in the library and I can search the internet for information. But I can also find experts to help me learn. Today, I have an expert that can help us learn more about something I've noticed growing both here at Ritchie Woods and probably growing around your school and home. This is my friend Lori, and she's an expert on plants.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for inviting me to Ritchie Woods today.
Thanks for coming to help. Lori, how did you learn so much about plants?
Well, I've always been curious about plants. And when you're curious about something, you want to learn as much about it as you can. So I took special classes at Purdue Extension to learn more about plants. It's called the Master Gardener Program, and it helped me learn about the plants right here in Hamilton County.
So Lori, I asked you to help me to learn more about this plant, moss, because it's common. I find it everywhere, growing around my home and around Ritchie Woods.
Mosses are a special type of plant. They're very short and soft. Can you feel how soft this is?
Wow, it feels like carpeting.
It sure does. It feels soft and a little bit spongy when you touch it. You know, Amy, most plants have roots that are underground in the soil, and plants use their roots to soak up water. But mosses are different. Mosses don't have roots. Instead, the tiny moss leaves absorb water that they need to survive.
Kind of like a sponge.
You got it, just like a sponge. And since they don't have roots, they don't depend on soil for water. So you can find moss all over the place, on rocks, tree trunks, even the roof of a house. But it needs to be in a place that is moist so that the leaves can get some water.
Wow, moss can grow all kinds of places. I remember that habitats have to have everything an animal needs: food, water, shelter, and space. And there's a lot of moss here in the forest. So do animals eat the moss?
Well, most animals don't eat moss because it's hard to digest and it doesn't have the vitamins and nutrients that animals need. And mosses don't produce seeds or fruit for animals to eat, or even pollen that, say, a bee might need.
So how does moss help this habitat?
Well, moss can absorb, which means soak up lots and lots of water. So if it's on the ground, it can soak up water and help prevent soil from washing away. And many insects, like ants, and other creatures like spiders and worms, will find shelter under the moss. And some birds like chickadees, right here at Ritchie Woods, they will line their nest with soft moss.
So how is this moss similar to some of the other plants that grow here?
Well, mosses go through photosynthesis, which means they make their own food with their green leaves, just like huge trees do. So they help give us oxygen too. But unlike the canopy layer trees, they don't like a lot of sunlight. They grow best where it's shady and moist. And just like there are different kinds of trees, like maple, sycamore, tulip trees, there are many, many different kinds of moss.
Wow, I bet it's so interesting to look at moss up close using my hand lens. All I have to do is hold this close to the moss but not touching it, and then move my face close enough so that it's in focus but magnified. Wow, I can't wait to sketch this in my science notebook.
It's super easy to find moss, and once you find it, you can find out what kind it is by checking a field guide or using a device to search for information.
Lori, thanks so much for coming to Ritchie Woods and helping me learn more about moss.
Sure thing. I love exploring and learning new things about plants too.
So let's review what we've learned today. We've learned that we can be scientists and look at the phenology of plants, nature's calendar of how plants change over time. We can look closely and then use a notebook to record our observations, data, and feelings about what we see.
And we don't have to be in a forest like here at Ritchie Woods. We can do this at home or even at school. All we need is a pencil, paper, and maybe a magnifying glass to help us look at things closely. Spring is the perfect time of year to start keeping records of how nature changes from week to week, month to month, season to season.
We learned that there's a huge diversity of plants living in the forest. Remember, the word diversity means variety. The variety of plants is what makes the forest so beautiful. The forest has 5 layers, and in spring, the layers turn green from the bottom up. We have the forest floor, where the soil is, the herb layer, where the short plants like wildflowers grow, the shrub layer that has woody plants, about my height, the understory, smaller trees, and then the canopy layer, where the tallest trees are.
There are so many diverse plants. Which ones are you curious about? Trees, flowers, shrubs, grasses, wildflowers, mosses? You can learn more about that plant by reading informational books, searching websites, and asking experts. I know Susan and I are going to have so much fun making notes in our science notebooks today. We hope you'll do some exploring today too. See you next time.